Welcome back, Week 11 Waiver Wire Pickup Show. As always, Luke Reimer next to Ashton Rich. We're presented by Flurry Sports. We are here to kind of talk through some Week 11 Waiver Wire Pickup stuff. As your fantasy team, as you're kind of looking towards the fantasy playoffs here, right? We've kind of got through the chunk of the season. I think at this point we kind of really know what NFL teams are. I guess there's some teams that are still a little bit of a question mark. But in terms of fantasy football, we know the guys who are going to score. We know the guys who maybe we need to get off. And at this point, Ashton, I think it always comes to like this point around like this week 10, week 11, week 12 mark where I'm looking at the waiver wire and not a lot there's very slim pickings. It feels like everybody is somebody who's been picked up. But that's why we're here tonight. We're telling you, you're looking at that, you don't like anyone. We're telling you why to like some people. We're giving you some insight. We're gonna breeze right through it and tell you, hey, if you need a quarterback, we got quarterbacks for you. If you need a tight end, we got tight ends for you. But before that, Ashton, how was the week? How was the weekend? How was the week? Kind of an interesting week of football. As a Packer fan, I was at the game last night. That was not very fun. Defense looked good, but other than that, it was horrible. But I don't know. Football's kind of hit its stride. It feels like.
Yeah, for sure. Last night's game definitely made me feel lucky that I was watching it on mute, so I didn't have to pay attention to that slugfest for most of it. Gut told me Eagles. I ended up playing Packers. Just how it goes sometimes.
That was one of those games that maybe I'm too in on Packers, but like the Packers were favored in that game, and felt like the Eagles should come in and dominate them after the Packers lost to the Panthers. But that was a game where I'm like, what does Vegas know? Why are the Packers favored? So I went with the Packers, and that obviously was not the right choice.
Yeah, for me, it was just really a case of like, okay, so the Packers have been, at least when they've lost, kind of susceptible in the run game for whatever reason. Like Rico Dowdle was basically the only reason the Panthers won, if I'm remembering correctly. So I was thinking like, okay, Saquon is obviously much more talented than Rico Dowdle. The Eagles are going to run the ball a lot. This should be an easy Eagles like money line play and feel good about it. And then I've got a friend of mine that's really sharp who was on Packers, so that made me change my mind a little bit.
Yeah.
So bad vibes. Always go with your gut. Don't let other people talk you out of your own bets. And you can't be, you can only be mad at yourself for changing your mind.
Right. Yeah. I think at this point in the season, we're kind of also seeing teams like separate themselves a little bit from the rest of the pack. I know that they didn't put up a lot of points last night, but I think Philadelphia is still probably a top 3 team in the NFL. Detroit looks awesome. I'm a big fan of the Rams. I think that they're a very good football team. Just thinking Southern, like AFC, it really feels like Kansas City. Baltimore's kind of coming in their own, now that they're healthy. Buffalo, give or take, like I don't ever think that Buffalo's going to win a Super Bowl, but I mean, they're coming off a bad loss to Miami. It feels like this is kind of a big bounce. I would hate to play. I don't know who Buffalo plays. Oh, Tampa, that'll be a good game. But I think Buffalo probably puts up close 30, 35 points in that game. But really, like Seattle is kind of a wait and feel it out. They're playing good ball. Indianapolis is I like Indianapolis, but that still kind of feels like a wait and see it. How much do we actually believe in Daniel Jones moving forward? But at this point of the season, I think we kind of have our idea of our contenders and our pretenders, right?
Yeah, I think you kind of hit the nail on the head. NFC is kind of wide open. Rams are good. Eagles are good. I for one am in on Seahawks. I think I've seen enough.
Agreed.
But I think you've got 4, even 5 solid, really good teams that could compete for top billing in the NFC, and then AFC is kind of just it's the Chiefs, it's the Colts. If the Ravens rattle off a lot of wins here at the end of the year, that they're in play. Bills are. I'm never going to count the Bills out. Never going to count Josh Allen out, but they're just they got to get some weapons, man. Like it's just
I'm not in.
You can't get it done with just James Cook and maybe Josh Allen hero ball. Like, and I get that they've had, Dalton Kincaid's solid tight end and Keon Coleman's good, like 50-50 ball receiver. But like, there's a reason why they were so much better when they had a true like alpha receiver in Stephon Diggs. Like there's a reason why that everything looked so smooth and what they were like challenging the Chiefs. It's because you had that alpha to go to. So if I was the Bills, I'd really be looking to add, obviously nothing's going to happen this year. Obviously it's not the trade deadline's gone, but looking at adding like a Carnell Tate or someone like that in the draft, I haven't done any scouting yet, so I'm not sure who I think is good from the college ranks, but just some kind of alpha receiver to kind of put you over the top.
Yeah, I don't necessarily know that Sean McDermott is the greatest coach of all time either. I think probably, and maybe it's not a fault of Sean McDermott. Just having Josh Allen on the team kind of covers up a lot of holes. I think, right, playing superhero ball. So I'm curious, like you obviously his job's not on the hot seat or anything, right? But at some point, when does it change? And you're right, you can't fire the players, you can't fire the quarterback. So I mean, you lose to the Chiefs again in the AFC Championship this year, you miss out on next year. I mean, when's the tipping point of, hey, maybe we need to try something else? But again, that's not saying that his job's under fire or anything. I think the Bills are a good team. I don't think his job should not be called for at all. But I guess, talking about quarterbacks, let's talk about a couple of fantasy quarterbacks that you can pick up this week. This is so on bye is the Indianapolis Colts, New Orleans Saints. Not teams probably don't have Tyler Shuck that are actually contending as their quarterback. But, you're right, but Daniel Jones, I imagine, is probably on some people's teams that are contending. So if you're a Daniel Jones owner, I guess this is for you. Let's find you a quarterback this week. And one guy, he's my favorite player to ever step foot on the football field, is Aaron Rodgers this week against Cincinnati. It felt, Chargers kind of bottled that Pittsburgh, I guess, offense in general, Sunday Night Football last week. But I mean, we've seen what teams have done to Cincinnati. Like, this feels like a really easy pickup. Like, we know what Aaron Rodgers is. Doesn't really feel like he's going to have two stinkers in a row. Just watching him throughout his career. Now I don't necessarily know he goes out for like 404 touchdowns, but I don't think like 250 and 2-3 touchdowns is out of the realm possibility this week.
Yeah, no, totally agree. I think this one is less about the player himself and the matchup, really, for me. I don't think I'm ruffling any feathers by saying that the Cincinnati Bengals have one of the worst defenses in the NFL. I mean, they're awful. I'm trying to pull up their. Here we go. I got it. I know that they're god awful basically against every position, but so they're the third worst against quarterbacks, like by position. So they're giving up like 6.8% more fantasy points to quarterbacks. The only teams worse are the Cowboys and the Jacksonville Jaguars. Yep. So, and they give it up to the running back in a ridiculous way. Strangely, they're kind of just middle of the ground, middle of the road against wide receivers, and they're really bad against tight ends as well. We saw what Pat Freiermuth did to them the first time these teams played on Thursday night. I mean, I think you fire up Rodgers. I think you fire up all your Steelers. Don't do crazy things like start Roman Wilson, but you're starting Jaylen Warren. You're starting your Aaron Rodgers. If you don't have a better option than Pat Freiermuth or, probably Pat Freiermuth, I don't think you're starting any other Steelers tight end. But I think if you are for some reason like locked into starting Pat Freiermuth or, maybe you've got a Rondé Gadsden and you've got Pat Freiermuth, because I know I'm facing the same situation in the league, and I'm kind of waiting and seeing about Gadsden's health and like, is he going to be available this week and all that kind of stuff. And, if he's not available, I don't hate throwing Pat Freiermuth in there. I think you understand that, he might only get like 3 for 30 or something like that, but he could have another nuke game and go 6 for like 102 scores again. Who knows?
Yeah.
It's just always benefits when you're playing like the worst defense against that position in the league.
Right. This also feels like a really easy game because DK Metcalf has put up 2 stinkers he was wide receiver 50 this week, wide receiver 82 2 weeks ago. It feels like a really easy, just get him the ball immediately and let him run with it. I think DK Metcalf probably has a good week this week too. I think Rodgers is smart enough to know that like he has to get his only good player on offense involved at some point. And what better way to do it than start off against a division rival, who at this point, like I don't think Cincinnati makes the playoffs. I don't think that they really, make a run here. But Joe Burrow's looming. Like Cincinnati is going to get wins. Like this is a very big game for Pittsburgh, given the loss that they had the last 3 weeks. So if Pittsburgh is really about making the playoffs, like this feels like it's as close to a must win as a game is without being a must win. So yeah, I agree with you. I'm in on the Steelers this week. Kind of feels like a sinking ship at some point, but the matchup is too.
The matchup is just too good.
It's too good to pass up.
Unless there's some kind of external force like bad weather, which is always possible up around those parts of the world, this time of year. Outside of something crazy like bad weather or some kind of freak injury or whatever, I think you start Aaron Rodgers if you don't have anything. I mean, unless you have like a top 6 option at the position, I think you can roll with Aaron Rodgers this week pretty comfortably.
Yeah, and we got some people coming into the show right now. If anyone's watching has any questions, please drop them. We're here to answer questions. We want to hear from you. Give us some of your answers too. I love hearing other people's point of view on it. But the only other quarterback that really feels like he's worth picking up or worth looking at, Jacoby Brissett. like I know that Kyler Murray's hurt, right, and he's on IR, and this whole system kind of relies on Kyler Murray's mobility to kind of move the ball. But I mean, like I think Jacoby Brissett is a better quarterback than Kyler Murray. He's been good in his couple starts. You know, the 19 points in each of his 4 starts for the Cardinals, 2 touchdowns in each game. Plays a very injured 49ers defense that just like does not get pressure on anyone, and saw Matthew Stafford carve him up last week. I think this is a really, if you're desperate, play to play Jacoby Brissett, but I think the floor is there for at least 15 points this week.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I mean, he's been the Cardinals have kind of been just asking him to kind of like we're seeing with Joe Flacco in Cincinnati. They're just like, hey, just go out there and sling pill, like just go out there and throw the ball a lot. Since he started, he's had games with 44 attempts, 36 attempts, 31 against the Cowboys was his low mark, and then 44 this past week against the Seahawks. Now, granted, he was playing in like pure blowout catch-up territory the whole time. I couldn't believe the absolute belt whooping the Seahawks gave the Cardinals. That was kind of unreal. It felt like JSN's like overs were like a sure thing after the first quarter, and then
after like the first pass of the game.
Yeah, and they all missed because the Cardinals were getting the shit beat out of them so bad. Mm-hmm. So just kind of the way it goes sometimes. But yeah, I mean, I think if you give me a choice, obviously I start Rodgers over Brissett this week, but I don't think starting Jacoby's
I don't think
bad play if you need it. I mean, if let's say you had Daniel Jones and Jalen Daniels and Jaden Daniels, not Jalen, and you obviously Daniels is hurt, Daniel Jones is on bye, and you're kind of scrambling. Grab a set if you can't get Rodgers. I don't think you're in a bad way there.
I agree. Jason Ortiz in the chat. Welcome back, Jason. Nice to have you. Would you trade Ted McMillan and Kamani Vidal for any of Breece Hall, Quinshon Judkins, Jalen Warren, Derrick Henry? I assume this is a 2-for-1 trade. I have Rico, so don't want 2 Panthers, and I also got Hampton back week 13, week 14, trying to sell Vidal. That's fine with me. Like I said it last week, but I think selling Vidal is fine. I don't know how much value you're going to get for it because I think everyone's kind of in the same mindset that, hey, Omarion Hampton is coming back coming back soon. My opinion on this is, I think all these players are better. Like if you're fine at wide receiver, I think all these players are better than Kamani Vidal the rest of the season. I think any of it. If you made me pick one, I'm going to go with Derrick Henry just because, I mean, we know what Derrick Henry is when cold weather comes out. That's 200 yards a game. It feels like every week. But like if you can trade Vidal to a team that like needs to win this next week or next 2 weeks, I think that they might be willing to give up something for a 2-week rental of Kamani Vidal.
Yeah, it's kind of where I'm at. Like if teams need to really push for playoffs, they've got 2 must wins like that ahead of them. Maybe they're willing to make that deal. Or maybe it's just a situation where they need wide receiver help. Maybe they're missing Garrett Wilson and they already had Malik Neighbors go down earlier in the year or something like that. It's you never know what someone's situation might be. So I think I honestly probably any of these 4 I probably do that trade on the Ted Vidal end. I don't know if anyone's selling Henry for that. I'm not sure about Hall either, but I wouldn't be mad with Judkins or Jalen Warren. I was really surprised that Judkins didn't have a bigger game this past week against the Jets. It was kind of a weird – I mean, he put up 12 points. It wasn't like he was just an absolute dud, but 22 carries for 75 scoreless yards. It's just not really going to get it done. That was another one. I had Browns this week, and I think I wrote it up in the budget stacks article that I put out. But I really thought that Judkins and Brown's defense might be a sneaky way to get some points out of your DST, and obviously it went the other way. Breece Hall had a solid game, and Jets scored 2 special teams touchdowns. So right concept, right game, just wrong side of things. That's just how it goes sometimes. But
hey, I'm with you on that. So I've been writing up Survivor articles for Flurry Sports. I think this is my 5th year doing it now. I'll give out 3 picks a week. I've never won 0-3. I went 0-3 this week.
Wow.
I had Bills. My lock was Bills over Dolphins, which fuck the Bills. And then I had Panthers over Saints, which is probably a dumb pick now that I look back at it. And then I had Browns over Jets, which again is probably a dumb pick when I look at it. But to your point, like the Browns should have won this game. I guess that you can never count on special teams. But just talking about Quinshon Judkins here, you talked about 22 carries for 75 yards and, scoreless yards, not great for fantasy. But like you said, it's 12 points. Like that really feels like his floor moving forward. And I'm guessing if you have Quinshon Judkins, you're probably playing him as an RB2 or as a flex, which I think you can do much worse than that 12 points a week at, right?
Yeah, I think so. The only thing I worry about with the Browns is, obviously they get the Ravens this week. Las Vegas is a soft matchup. Then they get the 49ers. Then they get the Titans. And they get the Bears. So there are soft matchups ahead for the Browns. Um, the 1 week against Baltimore here kind of concerns me. To me, there's a non-zero chance that they get done like the Seahawks just did the Cardinals. I mean, I think the Browns defense is obviously much better. So I would be surprised if the Ravens came in and just blew the doors off that early, that quick. But it's Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry. You never know what's going to go on with those guys. So that's my only fear with Judkins is just getting scripted out of games early because the Browns' offense is just kind of not great.
Yeah. So I guess, Jason, that was a long answer. I think we agree on that. Yeah, this is fine. I think Jaylen Warren is he's probably a tier below Henry, Hall, or Judkins. Like, if you can shoot for one of those guys, I would rather do that. But I think Jaylen Warren's fine. It feels like a lot to give up for Jaylen Warren now that I'm thinking about it. But if you need a running back who's going to be on the field, who's going to be part of an offense that's moving the ball, like Jaylen Warren is that. I'm just never going into a week expecting that Jaylen Warren's going to win me a week.
Yeah, I think you might even be able to buy Jaylen Warren a little bit on the cheap just because, he's kind of underperformed this week. And, he's been a solid option this year. I've got him in a bunch of spots. I had a pretty strong stance on Jaylen Warren versus Caleb Johnson coming into the year. I pretty much just say, hey, why would the Steelers – unless Caleb Johnson comes in and actually plays really well, there's no reason for the Steelers not to give Jaylen Warren the ball. And it kind of played out like that where Caleb Johnson just kind of hasn't really done anything with the opportunities he has been given. Yeah. Kenneth Gainwell actually ended up leading the backfield in snaps against the Chargers. I guess maybe it makes sense because the Steelers were playing from behind some. But, I think that in games where, especially this week against the Bengals, I think Warren's a must start, and probably next week against the Bears as well. Must start these next 2 weeks. I would even throw him in that category maybe against the Bills. Obviously it's hard to project 3 weeks away, but
I think
you could do a lot worse.
Yeah, I guess Steelers, if you're picking up Aaron Rodgers this week, he plays the Bears next week. We know what Aaron Rodgers does against the Bears. I'll just say it at that. Mm-hmm. Jason, another question for us. He's in 3 leagues. His quarterbacks are Bo Nix in 1, Jackson Dart in another, and Daniel Jones slash Dak Prescott in another. Which league should I target Joe Burrow and how much fab? He is back week 14. Is there an update on Jackson Dart's injury? I guess I didn't do my due diligence.
I haven't seen anything. Let me see if I can find something real quick. The last thing I have is 10 hours ago. It just says that his status this week's uncertain with the concussion. The concussion stuff's always weird. Sometimes guys clear it in a couple days, and sometimes it takes them a week.
That being said, I don't think, if it's in concussion, that's not a 3-week thing.
No.
I've been staunch on, there's maybe 5 quarterbacks that I like more rest of the season than Jackson Dart last week. He's going to score a rushing touchdown in every single game, and he's actually throwing the ball well. People are talking about his running well, but he's also throwing the ball well with not very good targets, which I like a lot. I don't think there's a lot of film yet on Jackson Dart, so I like Jackson Dart. Not in on Bo Nix, I don't think.
I
can upgrade it. I think it's that one because I think Daniel Jones / Dak are fine for a championship team, but Bo Nix, I don't know that he's gonna get it done for you for a championship.
The thing about Nix, I just. And maybe I'm just a hater. I was never a huge Bo Nix guy in college. And, when I watched him on tape, I was like, okay, I can see where, he can play. I think he has to have a very specific offense that kind of molds around what he does well. Mm-hmm. And then he goes to Sean Payton. I'm like, oh, yeah, okay. So I think Bo Nix is fantasy viable here because he's got, Sean Payton that will, use him the way he needs to be used. And he's QB6 on the year, which is so funny because he's had duds against, the most ridiculous things. I mean, obviously it was a weather situation this week against the Raiders. That was kind of you can't really take that one for credit. But, he only scored 9 points against the Titans in week 1, which is kind of just funny to think about. I mean, he's got KC this week and then bye week. He comes out of the bye. He gets the Commanders, the revenge game against the Raiders, Pack, Jacksonville, KC again. I think you're okay with Bo Nix if you want to grab Joe Burrow in that league too, and maybe that just gives you options. I may get killed for this in the fantasy community. I'm not the biggest Joe Burrow guy. I think genuinely speaking, is Joe Flacco playing that much worse than Joe Burrow?
No, I agree.
Just to be real, if we're calling a spade, is Joe Flacco doing that much worse than Joe Burrow could be right now?
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. And I love Joe Burrow, but I agree with you 100%. The idea of Joe Burrow, I think, is what people get off on, which is I think he's the perfect guy for like Cincinnati was in a situation where they needed a quarterback. You get a guy who's just like the coolest guy ever that a team can rally around. The idea of Joe Burrow is great, but to your point, I mean, Joe Flacco is playing, maybe
And that's not me saying I think he's a bad quarterback. Because I think
agreed.
what he does well. I just think that I don't think that people were putting him up in the same conversation as like Josh Allen and Lamar, and I just don't think he's right there. I mean, I think he's maybe just a tier below that,
Yeah,
kind
I
of
don't
maybe in the
disagree.
same realm as a Dak Prescott. And there's nothing wrong with that because Dak's awesome. Like Cowboys fans,
Yeah,
well, I'm going to say Cowboys fans love Dak. Cowboys fans with brains love Dak.
yeah,
Then you've got older generation of Cowboys fans like my dad who just they hate Dak. They hated Tony Romo. They just want a guy like Troy Aikman, and they can't understand that Troy Aikman was handing the ball off to like one of the best running backs ever and throwing the ball to one of the best wide receivers ever. So
right.
it's just a hard conversation to have.
Yeah, to your point, I agree. Like you're talking to, I'm a Joe Flacco fan. I love Joe Flacco. I loved him his whole career. He's probably playing like 95% of what Joe Burrow is, as what we think Joe Burrow is when he's playing elite football. So yes, I agree 100% with you. That being said, like I don't think you have to spend a lot of fab here, Jason. Like if you
No, I
really
think you could probably get him cheap.
right. Well, my issue with that is I think there are a lot of people who like Joe Burrow, right? There's some people that are coming into this thinking, to your point, like he is a Josh Allen, he is a Lamar Jackson, he is a Patrick Mahomes. Um, I think people are going to spend on him. Like if you want him, you're going to have to spend on him. I just don't think you have to spend on him because I think your quarterbacks are fine enough to not have to. I'm not going to say waste, but not blow your fab on a quarterback that you're only going to get for what 3 weeks this year.
Yeah, and I think to that point, I think something we need to consider too is like real life football is going to play into the Joe
For
Burrow
sure.
thing a lot, right? So like if they come out the next 3 weeks and they go 0-3, there's no chance they can make playoffs. Why would you bring back Joe Burrow for
Right.
3 weeks of the season and risk injury when you can just like have him sit out and make sure and he's right for next year? That's just kind of from my thought process. It just makes no sense if you're not competing for anything. Why bring him back? I mean, there's no point to rush him back if you're not competing for anything.
That being said, this might be a little bit of a stretch, but Jason, if you can get him this week for fab, like when I'm thinking fab, I'm thinking like
$1, $2,
yeah,
maybe.
yeah, max at 5. If you can get him for this week, and you can kind of play up, look, he's back at practice. We all know what Joe Burrow is. Feels like a really good trade piece, especially if the Bengals lose this week to the Steelers. To your point, like, I mean, Bengals lose. They're basically if the Bengals lose like 2 more games, they're like dead in the water. There's just no chance. There's no reason to play Joe Burrow. I think you could probably play that up a little bit and try to see if you can get someone to overpay for Joe Burrow in a trade. I guess trade deadline is probably this week or next week for people. So if that is the case, you're gonna have to move quick on it. But I don't know. I've seen crazier things happen in fantasy football. Jason back with another one. Start one quarterback this week. We have Marcus Mariota playing at the Miami Dolphins. We have Aaron Rodgers home against the Cincinnati Bengals. We have Geno Smith on the home against Dallas. And we have Tua Tagovailoa, who I just mentioned. I forgot what I said. Playing home against Washington. It's an interesting one here. My heart wants to say Aaron Rodgers. I think Aaron Rodgers probably has the best floor out of this. I think he's got the most. Like I said, I think Rodgers goes at least 202 touchdowns. So I know it's not saying much, but I think that's consistent enough if you're looking for a fill in.
Yeah, my knee jerk reaction was Rodgers until you read off the matchups and was like, okay, so the Cowboys are the worst team in the NFL against quarterbacks.
Yeah,
The Commanders aren't much better. Marcus Mariota's got a good rushing floor. At first I was like, okay, I think it's Rodgers, and if you asked me to add a second, maybe Mariota, but now I think Mariota might be the fourth out of this one for
yeah,
me.
I don't disagree with that.
I think he's a safe option, but I don't know if he's going to do more than 15, 16 points for you.
I do think
I
that.
think it's Rodgers. I think I'll confidently go Rodgers.
I'm as big a Mariota guy as you'll find, but I think Washington can run the ball in this one, especially this game's in Madrid. Like this feels like this is 2 loser teams, Washington, Miami. This is like just run the ball, ugly game, get out of there without injuries. Now that I'm saying this, I'm kind of talking myself into that. This could be like a 40-40 game that's like really exciting that nobody really sees. But Washington should be able to run the ball in this game, which makes me not like Mariota as much. I'm not going to talk myself into Geno Smith. I've been saying on the show for like the last 3 weeks that I'm still a Geno truther. I am still a Geno truther. I'm out on Geno the rest of the year. Although I don't hate him rooting for him Monday night.
I think if it was any other team but the Cowboys, I think I'm not even thinking about Geno Smith. But it being the Cowboys and how bad their secondary is playing and like how bad their woes are on defense, I'd consider it. And something we haven't seen the Cowboys now after they've added Quentin Williams. So maybe
Right.
Jerry Jones is the genius that he thinks he is, and Quentin Williams is the puzzle piece to put it all together. But
Yeah.
you bringing up the Washington run game made me want to touch on this. Can we stop projecting Bill Merritt for 10 points a game,
Agreed.
please? Like I don't have another option in my redraft league other than Bill. It's like this week, literally, I had no other option. It was Bill or Isaiah Davis.
Yeah.
So, I mean, because Tajay Spears was on bye week, and that's kind of a deeper league, which is why my running backs are so sketchy there. But I'm so tired of I saw people on Twitter calling him an industry plant, which was so funny.
Mm-hmm.
I'm tired of the Bill. It was cool. It was a cool thing. Like, it was a fun thing beginning of the year, but I think I'm kind of over the whole Bill thing moving forward. Like, can we just stop trying to make him a thing? Like, I just don't think it's going to happen.
I agree with you. And then let's talk about tight ends. Jason wants to know which tight end is best this week. Theo Johnson. He might start Wandale. Theo Johnson. The Giants play who? Giants have Packers this week. Duh. Brenton Strange. I'm out on Brenton Strange. Cade Otton against the Bills. Bills played well against tight ends. I feel like is a thing. I think I'm going Theo Johnson if Jackson Dart is starting. Theo Johnson kind of feels like he's the number one option. He's not really. He's a guy who's catching touchdowns. I don't really like any of these guys.
Yeah,
I guess Cade Otton is fine too.
I could be talked into Cade Otton.
Yeah.
I don't love it because the Patriots, I guess, are kind of middle of the road against tight ends. They're not really good or bad. Theo Johnson, you said they play the Packers.
Yeah, Packers are bad against tight ends.
Yeah, Pat, that's the one position they're actually not good against is tight end. So,
yeah.
I don't know. I'm like you though. If it's Russ, I want no part of anyone on the Giants' offense.
Yeah, and just to touch on Brenton Strange real quick, he hasn't played since week 5. He has finishes of tight end 18, tight end 37, tight end 10, tight end 17, tight end 36. I know that Travis Hunter is out, and I know that Brian Thomas is a little banged up. Kobe Myers is there. Like I don't know. To me, Brenton Strange, I'm not starting him if I don't have to until I see 2 or 3 weeks in a row where he's doing something. Because a lot of people like Brenton Strange, and I don't understand why. He doesn't really ever tickle me. So I don't know.
I was a buyer on Brenton Strange in the offseason, and the thought process for me was just who else are they going to throw to at tight end? And he's a kind of a freak athlete, but it kind of the concept was just never really the 2 weeks that he got 7 targets was actually kind of used a lot in the offense. He scored 15 and 13 points. I mean, so usable, but nothing to write home about for sure.
Right.
I'm sorry. I'm just looking at my redraft team this week, and I'm just like, good God, it's getting so bad. Like, I'm staring down the barrel of being glad to start Kenneth Gainwell and Trevion Henderson.
Yeah. Let's transition over to maybe some tight ends you can pick up, Jason, if any of these are out here, if you like any of these better. Juwan Johnson, still only owned in 35.2% of ESPN leagues. 4th consecutive game, double-digit PPR fantasy points, and it's the 7th on the season. Sheet Shahid's not in town anymore. Doesn't really feel like there's anyone to throw to other than Chris Olave. Juwan Johnson scoring touchdowns, scored in the last 2 games. As always, he's a big target for rookie quarterbacks who are developing. Like I think I like Juwan Johnson more than I like Cade Otton and Brenton Strange, to be honest.
Yeah, the only thing I worry about with Juwan Johnson is the Saints are on bye this week, so you are kind of picking him up in order to stash him for a week. I still think picking him up is a good play. He's kind of doing a lot more of that stuff we saw early in the year where he's getting just a lot of and the last 2 weeks, it's not even really been a situation where he's getting a lot of targets. This week he just kind of had the one big play touchdown, and that's all he needed to get you there. But we've seen what he can do when he gets featured in the offense. He started the year off 11 targets, 8 catches, 9 targets, 5 catches, 8 targets, 6 catches first 3 weeks. So we know he's capable of earning targets and a lot of them in this offense. I don't know what how different it is now that Tyler Shuck's under center. Obviously, those guys were college teammates, which is so funny to think about because Juwan Johnson is 29 and is been in the league for 5 years now. It's just so funny, man. We got to get rid of all these COVID quarterbacks. It's unreal. Right. Yeah, I think that you're picking him up. Obviously he comes off the bye, he gets Atlanta. I haven't right in front of me how good Atlanta is against tight ends, but I feel like they're okay. Let me just check that real quick, actually.
Yeah, I mean, from an outsider's point of view, like Atlanta's is a solid
Yeah,
defense.
Atlanta actually is the best fantasy defense against tight ends. They're giving up tight ends are scoring negative 7.9% fantasy points over expectation against the Falcons. So Falcons are lockdown defense on tight ends? Question mark. Um,
Jesse
you
Bates
know,
is a good player.
yeah, I just think you're picking up Jawan Johnson, you're stashing him, you're hoping maybe he can be an option for you in a playoff run. Obviously, wouldn't expect anything out of him this week with him being on bye, but I think he's a solid option pickup because we've seen kind of proof of concept that he can be a high value tight end if given the role.
Yeah. One other one, and we've talked about him a couple times. We talked bad about him, right? About Dalton Schultz. Um, I don't know if I talked about it last week. He was in my tight end stream article last week. He was in my start sit him, and he put together a good week. Dating back to week 3, Schultz has been targeted at least 6 times in 6 of 7 games. He also has 8 or more targets in 3 of the last 4 games. Wide receiver situation is kind of uneasy in Houston. I guess we all know Nico Collins is great. He's not being the Nico Collins that everyone really wants him to be. I like Dalton Schultz a lot more with Davis Mills than I like him with CJ Stroud. I imagine CJ Stroud is probably, if he close to coming back, if not maybe next week. I don't think this is a very sexy pick. I don't think this is a pick that's going to go out and win you a week. But
He never is. That's the fun part
yeah,
about Dalton Schultz. He's never a sexy guy. He's kind of like Zach Ertz. He just goes out there and catches
right.
like 5 or 6 balls and falls down when he catches it. And you look up and you're like, oh, Zach Ertz got me like 10 points this week. That's what Dalton Schultz does.
Yeah, I mean, those 7 targets are nothing to scoff at. Like, it feels like Dalton Schultz is on, to your point, on any given week is a 3 reception for, you know, 40, 50 yards, and hopefully falls into the end zone. So I guess if you need, 6, 7, 8, 9 points from Dalton Schultz, I think this is a fine pickup.
Yeah, I don't hate it at all. Titans are surprisingly like one of the better teams in the league against tight ends scoring wise. I guess because they get killed in the run game. I don't
Mm-hmm.
really know what the deal with that is, but
I mean, Houston's not great running.
no, it's oh man, it's so dire. Woody Marks was available in one of my like random redraft leagues I did on ESPN, and I was like, oh, okay, he's a good like bye week fill in at flex while I wait for who was it? It was either Michael Pittman or Tyler Warren to come back. I know there's a league. Now there's one of these ESPN leagues that I'm in where somebody dropped George Kittle the week he got hurt, and so now I don't even
Oh,
like I'll run out two tight ends on your head. I
oh
don't
yeah,
care. Like I'm starting Trey McBride and George Kittle gladly every
yeah,
week in
for
that
sure.
league. Um, it all counts the same points wise, but yeah, I think that yeah, Dalton Schultz, man, he's
Yeah,
not
I mean,
exciting. He's not sexy at all. He's kind of the opposite of who am I trying to think of here? Just like name a tight end that's exciting to watch. Trey McBride.
right.
He's the exact opposite. He's not sexy. He's just kind of go out there and get it done, and sometimes that's all you need.
Yeah. I'm surprised that we've even had like a 3-minute discussion on Dalton Schultz because that's just how I don't really care about him. But again, 3 catches, 40 yards, hopefully falls into the end zone. Let's talk about some more exciting pass catchers. How about that? Let's talk about Alec Pierce with the Indianapolis Colts. We talked to him before. I talked about him on the show on Thursday. I think you're totally fine. Like, if you're in a league, I'm in a league with it's 2 receivers, 2 flexes. I've been starting Alex Pierce as my second flex for like the last 3 weeks, and it's been great. It's Colts offense. Obviously, it's kind of about Jonathan Taylor and running the ball. But in order to stop the Colts, you need safeties and linebackers to cheat up. And Alec Pierce is probably as good as any deep threat in the NFL the last couple of weeks. He found the end zone last week on an awesome catch. Colts are throwing deep shots to Alec Pierce, throwing 2, 3, 4 a game, and he's coming down with them. So I'm totally on board on continuing to ride the Alec Pierce train here.
Yeah, for sure. Me too. I'm like you. I've been starting Alec Pierce as I think it's called a receiving flex in that league. It's a wide receiver or a tight end.
Yeah,
He's been kind of a locked in spot there for me in my one of my main redraft leagues.
I will mention he's on bye this week.
Yeah,
So
that's the issue.
if you don't want to spend fab on it, you can probably get him next week. But if you want to get him, I think it's worth a pickup.
Yeah, I think that when you're talking about other names in there, Trey Tucker, or actually, I don't mind picking up Tez Johnson, but I feel like we talk about Trey Tucker way too much for what he
Agreed.
actually does. we kind of know what he is at this point, and it's just not good. It's just not great.
Let's talk about Tez Johnson because I think he's totally worth a pickup. It feels crazy that he's only owned in 27.9% of ESPN leagues. I mean, what was it, a couple weeks ago? He thought MVP chance were for him. But
that was so great.
No Mike Evans, Chris Godwin. It feels like he's still weeks away from coming back. Bucky Irving feels like he's never going to play football again. Tez Johnson is like he's starting out, outside of Mecca Buka. Buka is going to see probably the more of the shaded over double-ish coverage. Johnson has seen 9, 7, and 5 targets in his last 3 weeks. He scored 4 touchdowns over the last 4 weeks. I mean, targets are there. We know that Tampa and Baker Mayfield is going to chuck the ball, and Tez Johnson is probably the second wide receiver option right now. Like you're picking him up. Like if you have to start him, I think you're happy with that. Even if you don't have to start him, like only owned in 27.9% of leagues is like crazy in my mind. It feels like that number should be much closer to 50%.
Yeah, I feel like that number should be a lot higher. Some of the waivers percentages like don't really ever make sense to me anyway, but that one definitely feels like it's way too low. Especially with how the wide receiver position gets, that just makes no sense. Yeah, I mean, I think he's really benefiting. I kind of was thinking about this while you were talking, and the Bucs are kind of almost a poor man's version of the Rams from a standpoint of where the targets are going. And I think I wrote that up in the DFS article I put out. But, that's the one thing that's really nice about the Rams and playing them in DFS is it's Puka Nacua and it's Devontae Adams. And there's not – there's some one-off targets here and there to guys like Terrence Ferguson, which Sunday it was, we were going to run out the Slamulence on you, running these 3 tight end sets all day against the 49ers. It was awesome. But equating that back to the Bucs, it's a Emeka Egbuka, it's Ted Johnson, it's Sterling Shepard gets mixed in a little bit, but then it's Cade Otton sometimes. So I think that Tez Johnson is like the kind of the second guy in that pecking order. And like you said, maybe coverages start getting shaded a little bit more towards like Egbuka, and like we know Baker Mayfield's gonna, they're gonna sling pill because Rachaad White's not a very good runner of the football. Sorry if there's any Rachaad White fans in here, but over his last 4 games, Baker's thrown 23, which was not great, but then 50 passes against the Detroit Lions. Turned 50 passes into 12 fantasy points. That's pretty good.
Yeah, it's bad.
24 against the Saints. And then this week had a really good week. 43 passes, 273, 3 touchdowns. I think it's probably going to be more close to that going forward, especially after the bye, getting Egbuka a little healthy. Buffalo this week, they're susceptible. That you can kind of attack them through the air a little bit. Rams in 2 weeks is spooky. I wouldn't want to be anybody playing the Los Angeles Rams right now. I don't know when they play the Seahawks, but that might be like game.
I think it's this week.
It is this week, is it? Yeah, it is. That's going to be awesome. Total is probably going to be like 52.5 by the time it's done.
Right. 305. That should be. Well, I guess Detroit, Philadelphia is a fun Sunday night, but it should be Rams, Seahawks Sunday Night Football.
Oh, absolutely. Like, I think I said this in one of my group messages yesterday. Like, can we just flex Jets Pats on Thursday night to like 4 a.m.? Like, nobody wants to watch.
Right. Put that on. They've been saying that about Wisconsin football. Like, put it at 6 a.m. on Cartoon Network. Like, who even cares?
6 a.m. on Cartoon Network is crazy.
I've been kind of holding off on the running back position because I don't know how polarizing this guy is in Atlanta Falcons fan bases. I've always liked Tyler Algier, but again, he's not Bijan Robinson. Are you trusting Algier? Like he's coming in. I know like Atlanta was kind of playing from behind a lot of the game last week. But I mean, 2 touchdowns is nothing to scoff at. People are going to, like, he continues to not be I'm not going to call Tyler Algier a vulture. I think he's a much better player than what you would equate a vulture to be. But I mean, he's the one who's scoring right now.
Yeah, I think starting Algier, you just kind of have to know what you're getting in for, right? Like you know that this is most likely a situation where I hope he scores me a touchdown. And that's a scary place to be. We've all been there before in fantasy, but this theoretically should be revenge week for the Falcons against the Panthers, who they got embarrassed by earlier in the season.
Yeah,
they've kind of been getting embarrassed by everybody though. It's bad vibes when you're towards the bottom half of the NFC and you don't have a first round pick this year. It's just not great. But only teams worse against running backs than the Panthers are the Cowboys, Titans, Giants, and Bengals. I think that lines up for a solid day for what the Falcons want to do. I think they've kind of committed to this. We're going to try and, you're going to put 2 backs out there that have kind of, really alternating kind of skill sets. play off each other. Bijan more of kind of like a quick game guy, outside runner, and Algier being much more between the tackles. I wouldn't be shocked if he scored a touchdown this week or even two like he did last week. I just think you have to go in with like the understanding that there's a possibility he gets like 5 carries for like 20 yards, and that's all it gives you.
Yeah, again, this is owned in 27.8% of ESPN leagues. Like, I would imagine that Bijan Robinson is probably owned in 99.9% of fantasy leagues. I know people do like weird, like whoever has the lowest score wins. So I, throw that out the window. Tyler Algier should also be owned 99.9% of fantasy leagues, all by the Bijan Robinson owners, because like he's scoring touchdowns, he's getting the ball with Bijan Robinson playing. Imagine if Bijan Robinson gets hurt. Either way, like if you're looking for a running back, or maybe you are kind of maybe the Bijan Robinson owner is kind of fighting for the playoffs, considering that Bijan has kind of been kicking people in the dick these last couple of weeks as we make a playoff push. I don't hate picking him up and kind of stealing him from the Bijan owner.
Yeah, for sure. I agree with you there. Handcuffs are really valuable in fantasy, just generally speaking. Used to be like, for whatever reason now, running backs just haven't been getting injured as much as they used to. Used to it was like 4 or 5, 6, 7, 8 starting running backs would go down every year, and it was just kind of pick your poison who it was. Now it's just who's really gone down for extended period of time this year. Omarion Hampton, Bucky Irving, and that's like it pretty much from the running back position. I mean, nobody else really has gone down. It's just kind of weird. And it's been like that for a few years now. It's just so strange. But something I'll throw out there, I've got a note that says Trey Benson's only owned in like 59% of Yahoo leagues. Yeah. If he's on your waiver wire, go out there and grab him. I mean, no reason not to. He's going to be probably every down guy when he gets back. I don't think Bam Knight and Amari DiMercado and, Michael Wilson, Michael Carter, are getting it done. Just something to note. These guys that are coming back soon, like the Hamptons, the Trey Bensons of the world, those guys. Just check and see if they're on your waiver wire. I told that anecdote literally earlier. Somebody dropped George Kittle. I stashed him for 4 or 5 weeks on my waiver wire, and now I get to roll out 2 tight end ones against everybody every week, and it's really fun. So just go and see what's out there on your waiver wire. Never know who people are dropping when they're out, for a couple weeks.
Yep. We got 2 more here. If anyone's in the chat, ask your questions. We got 2 more guys to talk about, and we'll get out of here. Other running back, we've kind of mentioned him a little bit. Devin Singletary, playing 33% of team's offensive snaps, not great, only getting 8 carries. But he's finishing higher than Tyrone Tracy in PPR scoring. I think a lot of that has to do with the receiving work. Singletary kind of feels like he's like everyone knows Tyrone Tracy, receiver turned running back, but this one kind of feels like Singletary is a safer floor when it comes to receiving. I think this is probably an interesting situation given the injury to Jackson Dart and Brian Dable firing him. But if this is simple football, it feels like both running backs are going to be involved. I think, at this point, if you need a running back, there's not, again, slim pickings. I think, I don't know, like Devin Singletary is going to be on the field. He's going to catch passes. Giants are going to be playing from behind. I think Packers have a little bit of a bounce back this week, and I think Giants are probably playing from behind and passing the ball in this game.
If Singletary catches like 4 balls for like 60 yards, he's paid off at that price tag. He's done all you can ask him to do at that point. So, don't hate starting Singletary, obviously.
Yeah. Yep, I agree. Last one we'll talk about. Again, any questions, and drop them. Any after the fact, we'll get to all the questions. Blake Corum, Los Angeles Rams. He is kind of upgraded over that. If you're a Kyren Williams owner, you're taking Blake Corum, even though Blake Corum doesn't play. Blake Corum's playing. He got 12 carries. 12 carries last week. I don't think he's a volume guy, but Rams are dominating teams. Blake Corum's being involved. There's no really reason to kind of workhorse Kyren Williams. I still think Kyren Williams sees the touchdowns, but like Blake Corum, this is definitely a deep, if you're in a deep league, to add him. I don't think you're picking him up and starting him immediately, but I think he's definitely worth, he's on the field. 12 carries, again, nothing to scoff at.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll totally agree. Blake Corum, I really thought that him coming in, this was before Kyren Williams signed his extension. In my mind, I was like, okay, I really liked Blake Corum as a prospect. He kind of plays a similar kind of style of Kyren Williams. This is their eventual Kyren Williams replacement. We know teams don't really like to pay running backs when they don't have to. And then, they handed Kyron Williams a cartoon bag of money. And I was just like, okay, well, I guess Corum is maybe in their future plans still, but who knows? Like you said, is kind of working his way into the rotation there in Los Angeles. Some of that might be just because they're kind of just, beating the shit out of everybody they play at this point.
Right.
But it could be sticky. His carries are remaining pretty consistent. Kyron Williams is the one who kind of fluctuates up and down. So I think that's something to monitor for sure. I don't hate picking up Corum because who knows? Maybe Kyron Williams was hurt this week, and you already had Blake Corum on your roster, and he's moonwalking into like 25 carries a week. So
yeah,
never hurts to have the backup.
I agree. That's all I got. I don't know anything else that you wanted to mention before we get out of here, but we're
only other thing I'll bring up is I'm the Luther Burden guy, but this note says he's only rostered in like 6% of Yahoo leagues. Don't go crazy with it. But DJ Moore got hurt. Olamide Zacchaeus kind of slid out wide, and that let Luther Burden get on the field more. Luther Burden is fourth among all receivers in yards per route run from the boundary at 3.5, and fifth among all from the slot at 2.6. He can succeed in any role. I think that's kind of evidenced by that. And, it's really thin. We haven't seen a lot of it. But I think those two things, kind of give us proof of concept. It was just always an issue of like, well, there's guys ahead of him, then he can't get on the field. Because if you've got DJ Moore and you've already paid him all this money, you're not going to just bench him for a rookie for no reason. DJ Moore hurt. Who knows what his situation looks like this week. This looks like a situation where, Moore goes down, Luther Burden steps in and never gives the job back to me.
Right. Yep. I agree with you 100%. I'm a Luther Burden guy. I've always, even though he didn't play well his last season in college, he still was great. So yeah, I agree. I also think that the Bears are like not even a real football team. I never know what's going to happen when they're on the field. But hey, things are working for them. They're playing good ball right now. And if anyone knows me, that's a lot to say. I hate the Bears, but I think that's all I got.
You mentioned Survivor and write-ups. I'm not gonna ask for any spoilers or anything like that, but I'll just say I am in the last 3 of a pool of me and my buddies. It is me, my buddy Sam, and my buddy John. I already kind of picked at him a little bit. I was like, all right, you fellow handsome and tall gentlemen, who are we taking this week? And one of them said, I believe he said Texans, which I considered. The other one didn't respond. I think Sam is the most unserious guy ever, so he may have said something like Titans or something ridiculous. But my gut, when I looked at the slate, said was Patriots.
That's the obvious pick, right? I hate
that seems like the obvious one. The only thing that makes me worried about that is that is a Thursday night game, and it is a divisional game, so those things get kind of weird sometimes.
Weird stuff happens.
If I get scared off of that one, I may just roll with. I may just end up rolling with Houston or Baltimore for that matter. Don't know how I haven't used Baltimore yet to this point of the year, but
yeah, I like Baltimore. I don't hate if you have to do it. I don't hate Dallas.
I think I've used Cowboys already. Okay. Yeah, I've already used Cowboys. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, if you have it, Baltimore's fine. Like I honestly think New England wins this game. The Jets are not a very good football team. New England is. I'm not saying that they're an elite team, but they're playing good football. I think Drake May is an awesome quarterback. And Mike Vrabel is probably a lock for Coach of the Year. I'm not going to say probably. He is a lock for Coach of the Year. Nobody else is going to win it. Those are my 2 picks. I'm trying to talk myself into the Vikings over the Bears, but I don't think I can.
That just gets spooky. I saw I'm going to have to go find this chart that I saw. It may have been from a tweet from Ian Hartitz, but I know it was quarterback efficiency. Yeah, here we are. JJ McCarthy is like hilariously bad, like worse than Cam Ward bad. Since weeks 1 through 10. Granted, that's not he was injured, so it doesn't count those all the times. But the other thing looking at this chart is Sam Darnold is like on another planet, and then like Drake May is like not far behind him, and you've got like Jared Goff and Jordan Love.
Yep.
But yeah, it's just kind of funny to see JJ McCarthy behind Cam Ward and Dylan Gabriel.
Right.
In an efficiency chart. It's not great. Granted, he's only played a few games, so he's still like really early in his tenure. Obviously remains to be seen kind of how he goes as he progresses, but I'm never one to shy away from taking an early victory lap. So
yeah, Now that I'm looking at it, I don't hate the Steelers this week. So I do three picks. I do a lock, I do a value pick, where it's kind of a mid-level team that has a good matchup. That'll probably be the Steelers this week. I'm talking myself into. I'll probably talk myself into the Falcons beating the Panthers because I don't think the Panthers are very good. But I'm just going to keep going back to that. The Panthers absolutely spanked them a couple of weeks ago, so I don't know if I'm going to do that. But
yeah, you're a braver man than me. I wouldn't touch. I don't touch the Falcons in eliminator anyway.
Yeah, I don't blame you.
I can't do it. It's not good for my mental health. So
yeah, I get that 100%.
I don't bet on the Falcons and I don't bet on Tennessee, and I do that for very specific reasons.
I'm just infatuated with Michael Penix, and whether he's a good quarterback or not, he rips that thing, and I love watching him every single pass he throws.
Mike Dick, baby. Well, I mean, who's got it better?
Right. With that being said, we are out of here. I appreciate everyone in the chat. As always, leave your questions after the fact. We will be back tomorrow. We'll be back Thursday. We got videos going out we have videos going out every day on Flurry Sports YouTube. Go check that out. We're trying to get to 20,000 subscribers. The goal is to get it by Super Bowl. Hopefully we can get there. There's a lot of good stuff going out. Zach is putting out daily stuff about trade targets, about really anything about fantasy football. Ask Zach what you want. He'll put something together for it. With that being said, Flurry Sports on YouTube. This is week 11 waiver wire pickup show. We'll be back next week, week 12, probably about 8:15 Central Time. I had to work a little bit late tonight, and my computer wasn't working. So we'll say 8:07. It'll probably be 8:15. But be ready. We'll be here.
Yeah, just come chill with the boys, crack a brew, have fun. That's what we're here for.
Talking ball. That's all anyone wants to do, right?
Absolutely. It's better things in life.
Exactly. Thanks, everyone, and we will see you next week. Peace.